Hello there you beautiful people, and congratulations on finishing that last coding challenge, and welcome to this video on variable scope. Now, scope is a very useful programming concept that allows you to keep certain parts of your program from interfering with others, and it's especially applicable to Python functions. Now, knowing how to use scope can make your life easier, but not understanding it can have you scratching your head wondering where it all went wrong. So in this lecture, we're going to take a deep dive into the world of variable scope and how it applies to Python functions. By the end of this video, you're going to know what variable scope is and why it matters. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first concept you need to understand is that there are only really two types of variable scope in Python. The first, there's one big global scope, okay, and there are multiple little local scopes. Now, if a variable is in the global scope, it's called a global variable and can be seen anywhere in your program. Now, on the other hand, if a variable is in local scope, it's called a local variable and can only be seen within the specific local scope that it's in. In Python, functions create local scopes, whereas loops and if statements don't. So let me show you an example. I'm first going to open a new script called scope.py. Okay, so file, save as on the desktop, Python Bible, scope.py, save it, maximize it, and we're good to go. So inside here, right at the top, I'm going to create a variable called a and set it equal to 100. Now I'm going to make two functions called f1 and f2. So define f1. It's not going to take any parameters. Parameters are optional depending on the function. And we're going to print a. Okay, then I'm going to do exactly the same for f2, and we're going to print a. Okay, now when I run both of these, so I'm going to do f1 and f2, this is going to call f1 and then f2, and when I run it, we're going to see that 100 gets printed out twice. Awesome. Now, why does this happen? Well, the reason why this happened is because a has global scope and was therefore visible inside both of these functions, and by that I mean global variables are visible everywhere inside your program, and therefore these functions could see the variable a. Now watch what happens if I move a's definition inside of function 1 using just a cut and paste there. So we now define a inside function 1. When I save and run this, we now get an error, right? We get an error because function 2 can't see the variable a. It says here, look, error in function 2, name a is not defined. And the reason for that is because the variable a was outside of f2's scope, because a is in f1's local scope, and therefore f2 can't see it. So an important thing to know is that functions always create local scopes inside themselves. So f1 has its own local scope, and f2 has its own local scope, and neither function can see what is inside the other function. In the previous example, they could only see a because a was global and therefore visible to everything. So imagine this local scope being like a little bubble for each of the functions, and whatever's inside is protected, and anything global outside can also come inside the bubble. Now, if I recreate f2 like this, okay, I'm going to go inside f2 and I'm going to say a is 50. Okay, now we can see if I save and run this that both functions work, but they give a different answer, even though they both use, if I can open up the thing, they both use a variable called a. And this is because the different local scopes that each function has. Local scopes, as I say, are like little bubbles, and the benefit of using local scopes is, imagine if I had 50 functions in an epic beast of a program, right? I wouldn't need to worry about making up a new variable name every time I wanted to use the functions, in case I overwrite something, right? I might be concerned about overwriting a variable. All I need to do is make sure that the variable scopes don't overlap, which is much easier to deal with. Now check this out, it's pretty crazy. What if I create a at the very top here in the global scope to be 250? okay, and I redefine A in each of the local scopes. Okay, so I say A equals 250, then in F1 I say A is 100, and in F2 I say A is 50. Okay, now I'm going to run function 1, run function 2, and I'm also going to print A. Okay, so whatever A is finally is going to be shown there. Now when I run this, we're going to see that function 1 prints 100 as expected, function 2 prints 50 as expected, but down here A is still 250. So why didn't A change even though I was overwriting it in each of these functions, right? It was first 250, I said make it 100 and print it, make it 50 and print it, but down here it's still 250. Well, this is because when you try to change a global variable from inside a local scope, Python stops that from happening and automatically creates a local variable with the same name. So in F1, we didn't actually change A up here. Python created a local variable called A and set that inside the function because Python thought, I don't want them changing the global variable because that could cause problems. And the same thing happened in F2. We didn't change A up here and we didn't change the A here. Python actually created a local variable called A inside function 2, made that 50 and then printed that. So finally, because the global value of 250 was protected, that is what was printed when we printed A down here. So to recap that main point there, you can't change global variables inside of functions automatically. And by the way, in case you're curious, these local variables are destroyed when the function finishes. Okay, so Python gives the variable some memory space. When the functions run, it just removes that variable from memory. So now you can't change global variables from inside functions automatically, but you can use the global value as long as you don't change it. You can use it but not change it automatically. So for example, let me create a variable called B and set that equal to A plus 10 inside of here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say B is equal to A plus 10. Okay, and I'm going to print B in here. Now I'm going to leave F2 the same and I'm going to keep all this the same. Now what we're going to see when it runs, oh my goodness, it's slow. Okay, so now we're going to see that function 1 actually printed 260. Function 2 just printed its local variable, and the global variable was printed here. So you can see that function 1, it looked inside of itself and it said, I can't see inside of my local scope a variable called A. So it looked outside into the global scope and was like, aha, I see a variable there called A, I'm going to use that. So it had 250 here. And then it did 250 plus 10, and that was 260, saved that in B, and then printed 260 out, which is what we see right here. Okay, now with function 2, we defined A as 50. Python was like, okay, we're not going to let you overwrite the global variable. We're just going to create a local variable, and it printed that. And because the global variable was protected, when we printed it out, it still had its original value of 250, which is what we see there. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to cut this video short here, and we'll continue discussing about variable scope in the next video. But just to hammer home the points that you've learned in this video, there is global and local scopes. Okay, functions create local scopes, and everything inside of a local scope is only visible within its own little bubble. Global variables are visible from everywhere, and they can be accessed from everywhere, but they cannot by default be changed from inside a local scope. If you want to change a global variable, you either have to be in the global scope, or you can use a trick that I'm going to show you in the next video. So I'll see you in the next video to finish up our discussion of variable scope. Hello there, you beautiful people, and welcome back. So what we learned in the last video was that if you have a global variable, you can use that value inside of a local scope. And Python's going to be totally fine with that. But until you try to change that global variable, at that point, Python's going to stop you, and it's going to create its own local variable inside the function with the same name. So here, where I had b equals a plus 10, that's fine, because Python is going to say, oh, okay, he just wants to use that value and save it use it and save the answer somewhere else. That's fine. But here they're trying to redefine a, which is it's allowed, but what Python's going to do is it's going to create a local variable called a, and that is completely different from the global one up here. Now that's the default. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can actually use this, how you can actually basically overwrite a global value from inside a function. And the way that you can do that, if you absolutely want to, is to use the global keyword. Okay, and let me just up here, I'm going to type global a. And I'm going to say a equals 100. Now, I do need to have two separate lines for this. I can't say global a equals 100. Okay, I have to say global a to let Python know, hey, I'm going to change the global variable called a. It's sometime soon. Then I do it. I say a equals 100. And then I print a. Okay, so what's going to happen is we start off with an original global value. We say Python, we're going to change it, watch out, and we're going to set it equal to 100 and print it. And then let's just show you what happens. Okay, so what we see is we get 100, 50, 100. And the reason we got the 50 in the middle, okay, actually, let's just start from the top. We had a global variable called a, okay? We then say to Python, hey, I'm going to change it with this global a statement. We then change it to 100 and print it. Now in function 2, because we didn't type global a, the same rules apply in the same default rules apply, I should say, in that Python is going to see that you're trying to overwrite a global variable. And it's going to protect itself, and it's going to stop you from doing that. Okay, so this is just going to create a local variable called a inside the function f2. So this is going to be local. This is going to be the global value. Okay, we then print. We then do f1, which is going to print the global value. We then do f2, which is going to print the local value. Then we print the global value again, and we see that. We see the global value as 100. It's been changed in function 1. We then print the local value of 50. And again, we print the new value of global A. It was 250, but because we changed it in function 1, it has now been changed to 100 down here. So I hope that makes sense, okay? By using the global keyword and defining what variables you want to access, you can override the default protection. And bear in mind, you can't write, again, I know I said it, but you can't write global A equals 100. Okay, if I do that, it's going to say invalid syntax, and it's just not going to run. You have to type global A and A equals 100. Now that will work. So there's a slightly special case of these rules, and that's when you use lists or dictionaries. Okay, so let's say I change A, instead of being a number, I change A to be 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this, that global statement, and I'm going to just say in here, I'm going to try and set A to be 10. Okay, we're going to see that, as usual, the global value is protected. Okay, because it just will. We can't overwrite the whole list. However, what we can do is, without using the global keyword, I can change a little piece of it. Okay, so let me say I want to change the first number to 5. Now watch what happens here. you can see that the first value has been changed to 5 in function 1. Function 2 stayed the same because we tried to overwrite the whole list, but you can see that the global value has also been changed just because we overwrit a little bit of it. And we didn't have to use the global keyword. So do watch out for that, because that can trip you up, and it's strange behavior, and it works the same for a dictionary. So do watch out for this when you're working with lists and dictionaries. And awesome, I mean, that's pretty much everything you're going to need to know about variable scope. However, it can be confusing, so let's just have a nice recap of what we've learned, okay, in the past few lessons. The first thing you learned was that there are 2 types of scope, okay? You know, there's 2 types of scope. There's global and local. Now, Python functions create local scopes, okay? But loops and if statements don't, okay? Just the functions do. And you saw that global variables are visible everywhere, and you could define a variable called A in the global scope, and everything inside the local scopes will be able to see it. And they can use that value as well. They could print it out if they wanted. So let's say if I got rid of this, we could, as usual, print it out. And that's going to, every local scope can access the global functions, global variables. The difference is you can't overwrite a global value from inside a local function, or local scope, sorry. And what happens instead is Python, if it sees you wanting to overwrite a global value, it's going to block you unless, and it's going to create a local variable with the same name, unless you use the global keyword. So let's say I type global A, and I said A equals 100. This is going to now overwrite for everyone the value to be 100, and we're going to see that that's going to propagate through all 3. Now, the exception to this is when you're using lists or dictionaries, and they also do not let you overwrite the whole thing, but without using the global keyword, you can, in fact, overwrite a little piece of it. So I could say A0 is 5. And that is going to, as well, change for all 3 functions. So I hope that makes sense. It's quite a lot of stuff to take in, so don't worry if you have to rewatch these videos a few times if you're still a bit confused, as it is a rather confusing topic. Just watch it again, take good notes, and try it out for yourself. I mean, that's the best way to learn it, right? And I'm sure you'll have a eureka moment sometime soon. And it's well worth learning this properly rather than skipping it and ending up confused for hours and hours when your program breaks or does something unexpected in the future. So just spend the time now, get the concept down, and you'll thank yourself later. So if you do feel comfortable with all of that, next we're going to be coming on to the difference between function arguments and function parameters, which is a critical thing, and it's very important you need to know about. So I'll see you in the next video.